Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I'm Aisha, and I welcome you all on behalf of Octara in this 1 hour webinar on servant leadership that will be led by our expert Junaid Akhtar, who's from USA. Uh, Before I introduce our speaker of the day and formally commence the session, I would like to share some housekeeping rules to avoid any distraction and background noise. I would request you all to mute yourselves during the session and be on the listen only mode. If you have any technical issues, please try log out and log in back. It may solve your issue. This session is being recorded and will be later available on Octara's YouTube channel. If any of your friends or colleagues have not registered yet, they can view us on Octara's Facebook page. We are streaming live over there as well. During the session, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat panel and we'll take your questions towards the end in the Q&A session. Other than that, if you have any technical issue or anything, you can put it in the chat box and my colleague Sare Matik, who is the co-host of this meeting, will cater to your query. Moving on, I would like to take the opportunity here and talk about the initiative which was taken during the pandemic. It's called the WebMall Plus. Now, what is this? WebMall is the brainchild of our CEO, Jamil Janjua, who felt the need of e-learnings during that time where all of us were working from home and we were like disconnected from the physical world. So there comes the a e-learning platform which is called Octara WebMall Plus. It's a one-stop learning solution which provides complementary programs in form of webinar, talk, podcast, e-learning reports, blogs, storytelling, and whatnot, to facilitate not only HR and corporates working in different professions, but also anyone who is interested in self or professional development. So if you want to become a part of this group or access to all these programs, you can sign in by registering in the through this link coming on your screen, and I'll also paste this link in the chat box later. Now, here is a message from our CEO. It's a 2-minute message about what we do at Octara.
Hi, hello. My name is Jamil Janjua, and I'm the CEO of TCS Octara. Octara is a company that belongs to the TCS group of family, and it has established an enviable reputation as being one of the leading executive training service providers in Pakistan. A large part of our success is attributed to our chairman, Mr. Khalid Wan, whose personal commitment to encourage the development of the people at both TCS and at the Pakistan level. It has been very, very stimulating and very, very inspiring for us. We take great pride in delivering high quality learning experiences which are based on extensive research of training needs, after which programs are created, working with the best possible trainer, the content developed to address the needs, then marketed as a series of leadership acceleration programs, and finally delivered, ensuring all logistics is taken care of to ensure a high quality learning experience. Our team motto at Octara is to help you succeed. Thank you. Nice.
Now, I would like to introduce our facilitator of this webinar, Junaid Akhtar, who is originally from Pakistan, but being working and resided in USA for the longest time. He is a corporate executive and coaching professional in USA. He has over 2 decades of experience in leadership development and corporate turnaround. He is the recipient of Transformer Award from General Motors, transforming the company from bankruptcy to profitability. He has diverse and extended experience working with global Fortune 500 firms across America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. Junaid has done his executive leadership program from Harvard Business School. And I would like to share a personal thing about him. He likes to spend his time, leisure time, in reading books and playing golf. So, without any further ado, I would like hand over, introduce, and to Junaid Akhtar, and over to you, Junaid. Thank you for coming on board, and wish you a great webinar ahead.
Thank you, Aisha. Ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to you all. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope you can hear me well too. If not, you can let us know and we'll fix the issue there. Today, we're going to have a great webinar, a relatively new topic, servant leadership, but very interesting, very thought-provoking. So I would strongly recommend that you stay for the entire duration because at the end of the day, we will be distributing e-certificates to all the participants who are staying for the whole time. And guess what? If I can keep you awake for the entire duration, I'm going to get one for myself. So, well, not a bad bargain. So jokes aside, let's get started. And let me share my screen here with you guys. I hope everyone can see my screen now.
Yes, it's coming fine.
Aisha,
Yeah, I can see the screen. Just keep on full view. Yeah, it's
okay,
coming.
it's full
coming
view
perfect.
now.
Yeah.
All right. So a little bit about myself. As Aisha said, I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I come from a corporate turnaround industry. It's kind of hard industry to explain, and sometimes I struggle explaining to people what I do for a living. So it's kind of funny. I started my career as an engineer and transitioned into supply chain and finance, and then finally corporate turnaround. I love teaching and I love coaching and development. Some of the areas that I really enjoy, along with corporate turnaround and financial restructuring, is leadership development. Either it's executive presence development or communication skill development or anything else that can help a leader, emotional intelligence or things of that nature. As Aisha pointed out, I love reading, play golf, and what she didn't point out is that I also like cooking, but I'm not allowed to cook because according to my wife, I cook for one day and she has to clean the kitchen for the entire week. So no opportunities for me for cooking. Too bad, right? You see some logos on the right-hand side of the screen. So these give you a little bit flavor of what I do and what kind of clientele I have. These are relatively known companies, so I put some of them here, but there's a lot more that I have worked with as a consultant or as an employee. So we got a pretty tight agenda here today. Obviously, we'll start by building the case for servant leadership, why we need servant leadership, and who is a servant leader, right? And based on that, we will work on the transition of mind, moving from desiring success to achieving success. So our focus will shift from desiring alone to achieving, exactly. And how do we do that? Is the 7 attribute model. That's the tool we'll be using for focusing on achieving success. And if time allows, we'll deep dive into a couple of attributes, especially on emotional intelligence. And obviously, toward the end, we'll spend some good amount of time in Q&As, right? So let's start with who is a servant leader and why do we need them, right? So if you look closely, servant leadership is a leadership style through inspiration, not through authority. And there's a negative or derogatory concept about this word servant in many cultures. And I can tell you it's not about weakness, it's not about the servant, it's about the way you serve your team and your community, right? So it's not about being served, it's about serving your team and serving your community. Uh, it's not about capacity, it's about building the capacity and utilizing that capacity to the best outcome for your team and for your corporation, right? So they say it's not about being in charge, but it's about being responsible for those who are in your charge. So if we look closely in a mathematical form, what you do is you start with a traditional leadership and you basically have a couple of dosage for high level of care for your people and a high level of effectiveness, is you need both. You need care and you need effectiveness. With care, you build a stronger team and you attain a long-lasting success, right? And with effectiveness, you make sure you get things done and you get the results. So both are important. If you have one, not the other, then it will be half-baked and it will not serve you in the long term, right? So if we look at the global landscape today, right, we have the economic power shifting, more GDP growth happening in Asia, right? And Europe and North America staying stable. At the same time, we have climate changes that's impacting economies in many ways and letting ways for new economies to emerge, right? If we just look at the world GDP in last 17 years, it doubled. And if you look at the projection for GDP, it's going to reach 142 trillion in next 10 years or 9 years. What it tells is that you have to have more efficient and effective ways of working to survive and thrive. So old style of leadership is going to be outdated. And in some countries, I can tell you for sure, it's already outdated in Western Europe, North America. And when I travel to China, I see a lot of interest from frontline leaders, business owners, and CEOs in the subject. So landscape is changing, and that's asking and demanding us to change our leadership style. And as we look at the futuristic landscape, we see a very global and very diverse workforce. We have millennials and we have Gen Z. The force is so diverse in terms of ethnicity, in terms of beliefs, in terms of language. So as a servant leader, you have the best opportunity to penetrate in this landscape and get things done and rise and shine for yourself and for your company, right? So if you look at the overall takeaway is that leaders will operate in truly global economy and have to lead a culturally, ethnically, and age-wise very diverse workforce. A language of care is the common denominator, and that's the right thing for you to do as a leader, right? So the world is becoming increasingly complex. And in order to successfully operate in that world, leaders need to train themselves and train the team to basically embrace the future opportunities that's lying in the knowledge-based economy. And what else can be more effective than a servant leadership approach, right? So servant leadership will give you a change of mindset, basically a change of mindset. Traditionally, in many cases, we focus on desiring success. Everyone desires success, which is very nice and easy, no effort, right? And no planning, and things start here. We start there and we stay there. What we are trying to change is shifting it from desiring to achieving success through servant leadership, right? And training ourselves constantly and acquiring new knowledges, acquiring new tools, and doing a better planning so we all with a team can go and get a spot on the victory stand. I can tell you a personal story about developing yourself and developing your team. Uh, about 12 years ago in 2008, 2009, when there was a financial meltdown in the world, I'm pretty sure in Pakistan, people noticed that too. It was horrible in America. And I was attending a conference with Dr. Ram Charan. Ram Charan is a Harvard Business School professor, and he's a top management guru in America. And I asked him a very simple question. I asked him what his thoughts were about the companies who were not able to train their people because of lack of resources. And remember, this conversation was happening in 2008-9 when the financial crisis was at full peak. And I was just trying to gather his thoughts and what he thought about that. And he said something remarkable, which I still remember. He said, the need for training and development is more than ever now when the economy is suffering, when the times are challenging or higher than ever. And the graveyard of business is filled with companies who refuse to embrace change. So with servant leadership, you basically prepare yourself and your company and your team to embrace change. And only thing that's guaranteed is change. Nothing is going to stay forever. So servant leadership provides you an opportunity to change, embrace the change, and basically thrive in a changing environment. So we'll focus a bit more on achieving success through some of the tools that we learn through servant leadership. Most important part of this servant leadership is the 7 attribute model. And this is the core of our discussion. As you can see, right in the core, we have a handshake, which is a symbol of relationship building. We have a chart that's showing a growth, which is a growth mindset. And you see spur gears, which is a symbolic representation of actions, initiatives. So the core is relationship building, growth mindset, and actions, right? And along the core, we have 7 attributes that we'll touch today in the model, and that's very critical. Attribute number 1 is understanding the end goal, right? So as a servant leader, you a lot of time are the creator of the end goal. You are the creator of the mission, right? So you fully understand the end goal and you're fully ingrained in the end goal. And because of that process, you're able to transform the message into a very simple message for your team. And your team understands the end goal. As Stephen Covey had said, begin with the end in mind. So as a servant leader, you begin with the end in mind. And with a focus on the end, you constantly look at yourself, look at your tasks, and look at your actions. And you constantly do a Pareto to make sure that you focus on only important things. Clarity, and you will not allow failure to basically derail you, right? So there's a lot of great stories in that. And this is a very special topic and area for servant leadership. So I want to share a story. Michael Jordan was, without a doubt, one of the best player of the century, maybe of the human history in basketball, right? And we all know him, probably many people in Pakistan know him too, right? So he had his eyes on the end goal. He knew he will be working and hard in playing the best basketball of his life. And because of his focus, he was able to achieve that. And what people don't know is that he missed 9,000 shots. He lost 300 games, and he single-handedly lost 26 games for his teams only because of his failures. But he was focused on the end results, and he did not allow these failures to derail him. So servant leadership is the same way. Your focus is constant, perpetual on the end goal, and you do not allow failures to become a roadblock or a showstopper. You treat failure as a lessons learned. Ken Blanchard had once said that when he was a professor at University of Massachusetts, he would go in the very first day in a class and he will give like 30, 35 questions to the students and say, hey, you know what? We're gonna ask these questions in the final exam, and I'm just leaking everything to you so you can prepare. And when you are taking an exam 4 months from now, you are the best. And at this attitude, this approach, the university administration was pretty pissed off with him that, what are you doing? You're leaking everything up front. And his point was, shouldn't we let them know what they're preparing for? Should they not know what the goal is so they can prepare the very best way? So same way for servant leadership, it's very critical that we stay focused on the end goal and do not allow failures to derail us, and constantly look at the opportunities to do Pareto and focus on only important things that propels us towards the end goal, right? Moving on to the second attribute, connected with people, right? So as a servant leader, you have an obligation to be connected with people. It doesn't mean that you have to be a social butterfly or you have to be a people person. You can be a pretty much introvert and still be connected with people. The key is you've got to be a good listener. You got to be a sincere listener. And when you listen to stories, you establish connection. And you have to have this strong need to fight the narcissistic approach inside you. I can tell you every single person has some kind of narcissistic mindset. The problem is when you allow this narcissistic mindset to grow, it hurts you and it destroys you. So you have to constantly check your narcissistic approaches, meaning that you feel that you are the Socrates, you are the best, you're no match to anybody else. So in terms of talent, so you have to constantly watch yourself and check your ego under control and establish the relationship through sincere listening, through your social skills, and most importantly, your humility, right? So you have the ability to engage at all levels through your humility and through your attitude of gratitude. A lot of time we complain, whine. When you do that, you don't establish connection. Maybe you do with negative people. So you have to have a 360 connection through your attitude, through your listening skills, through your social skills, because at the end of the day, relationships are gonna matter, right? So you have to be very cognizant of that, and you have to be constantly doing that on yourself, right? Let's move on to the third attribute, which is emotional intelligence, right? So emotional intelligence is extremely critical for anybody, especially for servant leader. Having the understanding of your emotion, having the understanding of people's emotion, having the understanding of your surrounding, and having a control over your emotion is very critical. And acting according to this emotion and taking advantage of emotion is basically the name of the game, right? So as a leader, as a servant leader, you got to train yourself to reach and stay at the maturity spectrum of emotional intelligence, right? And you constantly look for opportunities when you interact with people to create synergies, meaning that you don't look at your talent or that person's talent. You look at opportunities to multiply talent, and that will create a lot of opportunities for you and the other people, right? So, as Maxwell had said once, that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. So, people really care and focus on how much you care for them. And if they realize that you care for them, then they really care about your knowledge. So if you have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't care for people, that knowledge is not going to serve you. That knowledge is not going to serve your team. So having the emotional intelligence, having the understanding of emotion, and managing the emotion in a way that suits the circumstances is a surest way to lead you to the path of success, right? So moving on to attribute number 4, and that's the execution mindset, right? As we said, a servant leader or any effective leader, they're always focused on the end goal. And in order to achieve the end goal, you have to have an execution culture, an execution mindset. Because you can have the best strategy, you can have the best team in the world, but if the execution is missing, you will not get to the end result. So execution, in other words, is basically initiative, very strategic initiative, right? So any plan can be a great plan on a piece of paper, only a piece of paper, but you want that plan to be real, you have to have a well-defined execution step and methodology and mechanism that your team can understand, that you as a servant leader can explain to anybody, right? So for that, again, you have to do 80-20, constant Pareto, to make sure you're picking the 2 or 3, the 4 most critical thing that is for achieving the end goal, right? So if you do it on a constant basis, it will not only transform you, it will transform around your surrounding, your team, your corporation. And as a leader, when you rise, when you propel yourself up, you basically secure a spot, a bright spot for yourself and your team and your company in future. So you basically reside on a sustainable position because of this attribute that you focus on action, you look at strategy, you design a strategy, but you don't leave it there. You focus on how to make it happen with the team. So execution mindset is extremely critical for a servant leader because they know that the greatest, the most awesome strategy will not work if there's no actions. So they are action oriented, and you and I as a servant leader are going to be action oriented, right? And obviously in life, you can look at your personal life also. It's very critical in your personal life as well. I mean, life can throw so many oddballs at you, right? Your house can be struck by lightning, right? Let's assume you have a lightning episode at your house. The natural lightning strikes your house and your house is destroyed. What options you have? You can complain, right? You can curse, oh goodness. Or you can complain to God. God, why me? Why not my neighbor? That nasty neighbor who has loud music on all the time. The lawn is not clear. Why me, God? That's one attitude, right? Or you can just collapse and cry and just end your life. Or you can say, okay, this was not inside my domain. This was not inside my control. What I control is I can start the rebuilding process, right? So you rebuild the house. Rebuilding the house is not natural, right? Crying is natural. Complaining is pretty natural. But you agree, in that moment of test and tribulation, rebuilding your house is not natural. But a lot of things are not natural. like driving a car is not natural, right? Swimming is not natural. But when you train yourself, it becomes natural. So as a servant leader, you train your mind to react in a meaningful way despite a very challenging situation, despite a very devastating situation, despite a very heartbreaking situation. And those things are not natural, but you train your brain accordingly. And if you do it on a constant basis for a period of time, it becomes your second nature. So as a servant leader, execution is the key for any project success. And you not only focus yourself, but you constantly repeat your demand from the team to adopt the same strategy, so they also are focused on execution, right? So moving on to attribute number 5, a perpetual learner, right? In our society, there's a concept, there's a misconcept that once you attain a degree, you consider an educated person, and it's really stupid idea. It's bizarre. It's hilarious, because a degree's shelf life is only a couple of years, and after a couple of years, you forget almost everything about it, right? So a perpetual learner is the one that you need to be. And a perpetual learner that does not become an educated person through attainment of a degree, whether it's a bachelor's or master's or even PhD degree. So as a leader, you have to understand that the perpetual learning is the process. And you learn, the most common thing is reading books, of course, and as a leader, you read, but you also read situations, you also read people, you also read world's mega trend, right? What's going around you, right? So the stability or instability around your region. And you learn, most importantly, the areas that impact your business, like finance, right? Like manufacturing processes of your company, your team's interests. So it's not necessarily learning from book, but learning from a situation also, right? So they say leaders are readers, and servant leaders are true readers. They read and educate themselves on a constant basis, and that's how they succeed. And if you look around the world, most of the successful leaders, they don't even have a degree. So having a degree can give you a little edge, but sometimes it is a killer because it gives you a mindset that you're all done, you're good, right? So if you look at many successful people like Bill Gates or Ted Turner, CNN, Steve Jobs, Michael Dell, or Mark Zuckerberg, or Henry Ford, Walt Disney, and Steve Wozniak of Apple, they did not even have any degree at all. They did not have any college degree. They're the role model in success of a leadership, right? So as you constantly and perpetually educate yourself, and you do the education through travel, through reading the situation, through reading your people, through reading your surrounding and mega trends. So it's very imperative for a leader, any leader. If you want to become a decent person, you cannot be a decent person without a lot of reading. So leadership is a very special position, a very high status position. And in order to achieve and sustain that position, you gotta be a reader and you gotta be a perpetual learner, right? So let's move on to the next, a relationship builder. A relationship builder as a leader, you mix and mingle with a lot of people. But in here, you especially have to show that you have no insecurities and you feel extremely comfortable meeting and staying with people who are more intelligent, who are more learned, and who are more effective than you. So when you do that, You basically raise your level, your collective level. And how you do that? You do that through display of humility. And you seek to have mentors who can provide you mentoring opportunities, right? And you also offer yourself as a mentor to other people. So on one end, you're learning, and on the other end, you're basically educating people, right? So it's very critical for your growth as a leader. And there was a book written in America a long time ago based on a true survey. And the outcome or the synopsis of that book was that no matter how talented you are, no matter how brilliant you are, you will become the average of 5 people you closely associated with. So leaders know that fact. So that's why they surround themselves with people who are smarter, educated, and intelligent. And you can only do that if you have killed your narcissistic trends, if you have control on your ego and good emotional intelligence is there, then you surround yourself with smart people and you basically constantly raise your level. And this is the name of the game. You up the game constantly with learning, and you learn from people around you. So obviously, as a servant leader, you cannot afford to have insecurities. You must feel comfortable to be uncomfortable. And that's the name of the game for a servant leader, right? So this is slightly different from number 2. In number 2, we also talking about people, but this is people at all levels. This is relationship 360. But number 6 is relationship is specifically focused on people who are more intelligent and smarter, with whom you may feel uncomfortable because you're not as smart, you're not as intelligent. But if you start feeling comfortable with that, you throw away your insecurities and ego, then you notice that your level is rising sharply. All right. So let's go on to the 7th attribute of a servant leader, and that is the ability to delegate. Frankly speaking, either your leader or an individual contributor or any ordinary person, you always face poverty of time, right? So as a leader, the shortage of time is going to kill you. And as a leader, it's very possible that you'll be very smart in so many things, and you can do all those things yourself, but that's not a smart idea, right? The smart idea is you don't do everything yourself. You got to delegate things, right? So even if you're very good at so many things, you still should not do everything yourself. You got to delegate things to select the most important, most critical, and the most effective thing that you do, right? So it's very important that you delegate on a constant basis because it will free up time for you to focus on the right thing, focus on the critical things for you, for the company, for the family, right? And at the same time, when you delegate stuff to your people, it's good for their growth. They will be growing. They will be rising to the ranks of leader because as a servant leader, you also have an obligation to grow more leaders for future. Not only you take your team up, your company up, but you also grow more leaders for future. And you can only do that by delegating some important but some regular tasks to the team. And slowly and gradually, your team becomes more and more efficient, right? There's a common saying in everywhere around the world I go that leaders should work smart, not hard. But frankly speaking, if you look closely, leaders work very hard. And a lot of time, almost always I see the case, the hard work and smart work are not mutually exclusive. So I would not advise you to fool yourself with that concept. Maybe there's some exceptions, but almost always you see the hard work pays around. So no cutting corners, no hanky-panky ways. focus on hard work, and delegate to the team so your team can grow as well. All right. So this was the seven-step model. I hope it will be very helpful. And I touch a little bit on these two areas just in a couple of minutes because these two are the most critical of this model. So let's realize this one area, which is very critical, that you have to understand that narcissistic friends are enemy number one, right? And we as human beings, as leader, we are very bad at assessing ourselves. When we assess ourselves, we see ourselves the best match for Socrates, the best match for the best intellectual mind in the world. And almost always is the case that we are wrong. So when we assess ourselves, we overestimate our talents, regardless of which area is that. So know that there is a roadblock, there is a trip here, that there's a hazard here as a leader. And if you can control yourself through this by getting constant feedback from people, you can save yourself from residing on this place called Mount Stupid. As a leader, you do a narcissistic attitude, you will never be there. So you show humility and you go through this learning curve on any subject, not necessarily knowledge, on anything. So these two social scientists, Dr. Dunning and Kruger, they got the Nobel Prize for this phenomena that they discovered in leaders, that leaders derail themselves by assessing their ability to be at the very high level, but in reality, they're not at a very high level. So as a leader, it's imperative for you and me to have intellectual curiosity and have a growing mind, not feeling or thinking that we know all. It's very, very possible. It's very tempting to feel that, hey, I'm the leader, I'm at the top, I know everything. And that's the killing proposition. So when you control yourself, you may find, hey, you know what? I don't know nothing. And it's called a valley of despair, but stay there, stay put. As you keep going, you realize you have control. So most importantly, you don't allow yourself to reside on Mount Stupid. I'll strongly recommend that you spend some time reading this plot. This is a fantastic work done by two Nobel Prize winners, and I want the team and you to basically spend some time absorbing that. I want to spend a minute on the emotional intelligence. We touched on that. So we basically, as a leader, put ourselves on a constant path of learning and raising our emotional intelligence day by day with every situation, with every failures, with every glitch, with every opportunity. So basically two concepts, your own emotions and the emotions of people and your surrounding, and channelizing your emotion in a way that's not destructive and that's very constructive and at the same time very communicative. So having a good emotional intelligence is imperative for yourself in your professional life and also in your personal life. This is a very vast subject, honestly, and there's no way anyone can cover that in a short period of time. So I just want to touch the subject so you have a feel for that and you have a little bit of awareness of that. And basically, I'm pretty sure you're aware of that, but it will remind you to hone on that area for yourself. And also know that people need recognition. So if you know the needs of hierarchy that's on the screen now, it will help you manage your people more effectively. And you realize that needs have natural hierarchy and different people are motivated by different things. So one thing that can motivate one person cannot be the motivator for another person. So needs are different, preferences are different. So one size does not fit all, right? And at workplace, most people need recognition and the opportunity and assignments for self-actualization. So you have to realize what are the basic needs, what are the safety needs, what are the belonging and love and cure needs, and what's the esteem needs, and finally, the top level is self-actualization. And again, being a very vast area, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that. I just want to introduce you to the pyramid here so you can spend some time and have some deeper awareness, right? So with that, I will thank you for listening, and I hope you all are still awake. And I'll pass it on to my friends at Octara. If you have any more questions, you can reach me directly. And you can obviously anything further in Pakistan, we can do it through my partners at Octara. So Aisha, over to you.
Thank you, Junaid, for the valuable nuggets that you have shared regarding servant leadership. I think all the seven model was very effective. If we like implement any one of the component, I think we can become a good servant leaders. So thank you for the valuable training, and thank you for the valuable webinar. I would request you to please stop sharing your screen and request JJ to share, some few remarks regarding and then we can move on to the Q&A session.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a great presentation, Junaid. Yeah, I found it very useful by way of learning and relearning a lot of things that I had forgotten in terms of the 7 attributes of a good leader. And your presentation, I think, had a greater impact because it was eloquent, it was well structured, it was very inspiring in terms of the examples that you gave, and it had good stories in it. Everything that a good presenter should be involved in making a good presentation. So thank you very much, Junaid. On a side note, I would like to just share with you, the organization that I worked for, my parent company, TCS. Sometimes in 96 or 97, when I was communications director with them, I was asked by the owner, the chairman, Mr. Khalid Awan, that he was receiving a lot of complaints, a lot of issues with regards to the employees that we had in TCS at that time. And he suggested, and I think it was a great suggestion, that people do not realize that we are in the service business and that we are actually, like you rightly pointed out, Jeanette, servants, of our customers, And besides that, service is a spiritual act in our religion, you see. So there's no reason why these employees that we have, that they should be rude to our customers, that they should not be responding to customers, that should not be available to internally as well as externally to the customers. So these people need to realize that they are servants, and therefore from tomorrow onwards they will not be called by the title that they have as an operations manager or a chief financial officer or a CEO, which was himself. We will all be considered as khadims. We will tell the market that we are now khadims. So I am the chairman khadim. So I'm chair khadim. Then I in my case as a communications director, I'm the khadim of communication, khadim of HR, khadim of this. So that was again in a manner, like you rightly pointed out, trying to change mindsets of people. And I think we did that for a long time. Even when we sent out proposals or we sent out invitation, it was ending up with khadim. So if it was the chairman, he used to write his name, Khaldawan, chief khadim. So
wow.
that had which in a country like Pakistan, to be khadim, like you rightly said, has a sometimes a negative connotation. You see, so people at that point in time must have realized that this company is now changing for the better. It was already good, but it's going to be changed for the better. So that was one point I wanted to make about ourselves. The other thing was that, we had a very nice, what should I say, a nice associate working with us, a trainer called Ramiz Alawala. I don't know whether you have heard of him or know of him, but Ramiz Alawala and myself, when I was, doing freelance consultancy, we had come up with a program called Servant Leadership. And again, I'm talking about 2000 and maybe 2003, 2004. So I'm sure that it will be somewhere in our archives, the program called Servant Leadership. But the way you have eloquently and very well structured presentation, is very useful for most of us who are right now listening to us. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of all the participants, on behalf of Octara, for your time and your insightful presentation. And I would like to also thank all the participants who have been here, more or less. They haven't left. There were 35 or 40 participants listening to you. And mind you, it's not the 35 people that we are talking about. Our reach is much more wider, much more extensive, because this is a recording. So this recording will be available on our website. It will be available on our Insta page. It will be available on our Facebook page, on Twitter page, and on our newsletter. And again, it's also disseminated on a weekly basis to 300, 400 HR people. So, your message of servant leadership will go to a much larger group than the 35 that are here. But the 35 that are here are people who are serious about learning, who are serious about advancing themselves. And I think they belong to, organizations that we have a lot of respect for. Pakistan Paper, TCS, then we have people from premier groups, from Parco, from Multinet, from Jaffer Groups. I would like to thank all these organizations and all these participants for their participation in today's webinar. You people are serious about learning, and we hope that we get more and more support from you, and we will bring back more programs of the type that Junaid has presented in future. So stay with us, register yourself on the webinar, and keep a lookout for our programs. I also would like to thank Aisha, who's done a great job at putting this whole program together with all these participants. I'd like to thank Zainab, Sarim, and all my colleagues at Octara for the support they give to this training event.
Okay, JJ, we have few questions in the chat box.
Okay.
So I would like to,
Good.
So we have a few questions like Babar Siddiqui is asking, servant leadership indeed a very thing in the West and large multinational, unfortunately not a very popular phenomena in Pakistan. So how long, in your opinion, will it take to change the mindset or culture?
I think it's already changing. I can tell you it's traveling east already. And in Asia, my majority of interactions with China, Korea, and Japan. In China, it's getting very popular already. And they realize the next generation of workforce, which is going to be very diversified, it cannot be managed or successfully lead by traditional leadership approach. So obviously in Pakistan, probably it's going to take a few more years, but programs like these will raise awareness. But definitely, I don't think that time is far away.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. Rahim is asking difference between corporate leader and a servant leader.
So I think I touched, and JJ also touched that the word servant has some derogatory image in many people's mind. And it's basically not the case. The corporate leader and servant leaders are not different, right? So your biggest enemy is your ego and your narcissistic mindset. So if you are a corporate leader and you have a control over your narcissistic mindset and your ego, then you are basically servant leader. So servant leader and corporate leaders are not two different things, frankly speaking.
Okay, so we have last question from Khurram. He's asking, please guide me when people misunderstood when you continuously serve them while your goal is to get things done effectively.
Can you repeat it again?
Like he wants to say, he wants to ask that because you in your way intend to serve them in the best of your at the best of your ability, but they are perceiving you as like getting things done. Like they are not acknowledging the fact that you are, serving them at the best of, like, on the best of your abilities.
Okay. And I've seen that myself engaging. I'm a practitioner of this concept, but I see many people around me also doing that thing. And one thing I noticed that's very prominent is building that rapport. You basically don't just practice servant leadership out of the get-go, out of the blue. You basically build your credibility, right? You build your rapport with your team. And once they realize that you really do care for them, and then even in harshest moment, they realize that you are tough, but you're tough for a reason, and they respect that. But you have to build first respect and credibility through humility and rapport building. So once you do that, you would not find that kind of situation a lot.
Yeah, we have another question from Tahir. He's asking any book or current leader we need to follow, or any recommendations for reading or gaining more understanding on this type of leadership.
There's not a whole lot of books there, but if you really like to read, I would recommend reading Simon Sinek. His one book that I strongly recommend, Leaders Eat Last. That's a very phenomenal book. And some books by Ken Blanchard also. Those two I would recommend very strongly.
I think with that we come. No, we have one question from Samra. She's saying, normally people don't even understand true meaning of leadership. So how can we mold them towards this? Means how can we change anyone's leadership style?
So I would say instead of having like two leadership style, let's redefine leadership that's in line with the modern days, modern timings, right? And very well equipped to tackle the challenges of today and the challenges of future, right? So incorporate those things that we had in the very equation, an extra dosage of care, an extra dosage of effectiveness. And how you get the effectiveness through that seven attribute model. And if you do that seven attribute model, you are almost guaranteed to have that effectiveness and also rapport and respect from your team.
If any of
And
the
I'd like to
participants.
add to that you know, employees generally are considered, they keep their, everybody says they're assets, but they're generally used as a, you know, what should I say, it's a trade-off, you know, you work and we will pay you for that work. You know, it's a transaction that is actually not very helpful. You know, if you start caring for them and looking after their growth, then what you're actually telling them is, instead of a transaction, you're getting a willing worker, somebody who's willing to work with you. See, so I think that care and growth attribute is very essential for leadership. And to answer Samra's earlier question, yeah, I mean, you can always develop, become leader, but you have to learn to become leader, and you have to come to some of our programs, especially if Junaid is good to be coming across to Pakistan, or we could do perhaps another online training program with you. Maybe all those who are interested in learning more about leadership, that would be helpful. And I loved your model of the, what was it, the Duncan, it was the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Dunning-Kruger effect, yeah. It's if the team can learn one thing, that one thing can make you very successful, frankly.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And these social scientists won the Nobel Prize for this theory that they presented.
Is this available on the internet, or is it a book?
I think internet has a lot of things, and obviously if you Google, you can find some, pretty sure.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, Aisha, you want to wind it down?
Yeah, I think with that we come to the end of our webinar. But before we leave, I would request all the participants to turn on your video cameras so that we can have a group photo with your thumbs up. Tarun, please, can you take the picture for us? Thank you, Sarim, for taking the picture for us. With that, I would like to quickly share the list of programs that we are having in next few months. We are having a webinar on LinkedIn Challenge. That's a program which is it's about personal branding and how you can personal branding using the LinkedIn platform. Then we have another webinar on Happiness Affair. That's leading a meaningful life and content life. It will be led by Sanam Fatma. And then there is, of course, a list of programs that are in Ramadan and post Ramadan. So if you want to sign up in any of our free webinar or online programs or classroom trainings, you can get the details on our website or on our Facebook page, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And you can also contact directly to my colleague Sarem Atik on his email ID and on his mobile number. In the end, I would like to thank all the participants, my colleagues, and special thanks to Junaid Akhtar for conducting this successful and a very valuable webinar. And we look forward to more webinars with him in the future. And I look forward to all the participants in our upcoming webinars and online trainings. Thank you,
And if there's any interest in any program with Junaid, please get in touch with us or directly with Junaid. We'd be highly appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, Junaid, once again. And bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Pleasure seeing you guys.